In this video, I want to talk about the eXist-db and the Unity3D integration, mostly using REST-XQ annotations. First, let me show you the structure of the Exist application. Most of it's vanilla. The modules contains RX query modules broken down by functionality. The data folder has an app folder inside of it, which has application-wide data. And then the devices folder has a folder for every single iOS device that has ever registered with Exist. So the first time that the game is run on an iOS device, it registers the user using the iOS device's unique identifier and creates a folder. The folder's permissions are modified so that the Exist user now owns the folder and the guest is denied. So inside of User Manager, we hope to see millions of users at some point for our game. Let me show you some xQuery code. For example, this is the registration call. It is not authenticated, so the only calls that are not authenticated is the registration and the login call. Unity's HTTP client has some limitations that we worked around. It only supports the get and the post verb. So here you can see this is actually a get HTTP call, but what it does is really creates a account on the Exist side, so it should be a post or a put. I have standardized all of these calls as well if I ever decided to write a client that supports all of the HTTP verbs. So we have a more standard, easier to read resource identifier. All of our calls, all of the Exist code execution is inside of try-catch blocks. The reason for this is that we always want to return a 200 HTTP status. It just works for us and it's easier for us to deal with. What we've implemented to support this is a standard fault contract. If an error does occur on the Exist side, we return a 200 status with a messaging fault JSON element and the exception details. For the authenticated REST-XQ calls, what we do is we first check the HTTP context. So the HTTP request comes over with HTTP authorization header, and what we do is we make sure that the user is authenticated and that the current DB user meets our criteria, otherwise access is denied. And this is also inside of a try-catch block, so if the user fails to authenticate, it ends up returning a messaging fault, and the details contains access denied instead of a 401 or a 403 status. Let me show you what this looks like on the Unity C# side. What we've done is abstracted away the HTTP creation and mapping back the response into our classes. For example, let me show you the account registration. So this is an unauthenticated call into this resource, and here you can see it's actually going to end up being a get verb. And what we've done to make it easier for developers is we've created a bunch of attributes that either map the outbound data from the object's fields into either the URI or inside of the body of the HTTP request. Same on the response. Here we're looking for a response that contains a is registered JSON element that is going to be mapped to the is registered field on the response. Let me show you. So in the game we have in-app purchases that either for real money or fake in-game currency. And what we've done is we show a list of the purchasable items with their prices and descriptions. At this point of the release, we've decided that these are the prices that should be set. But if in the future we see that people are buying more of one item than the other, or we're actually giving them more in-game currency for winning each level than they should, then we can always adjust those prices to make the game, keep the game challenging and fun to play. And this is one of the documents that when the game starts is retrieved and the game's configuration is set based on this document. Let me show you what this looks like on the C# side. It's an authenticated call into this resource. And here you notice another workaround. This is actually a post into exist, or it really should be a get because we're getting the prices and description of items. The response is then, the body of the response is taken and mapped into a list of IAP classes, which are just structures to hold the name, description, and cost of the items. Let me show you what that looks like in the game. This is the introduction screen. When we play the game, there's a bunch of HTTP calls made, and here you can see is the response for that document I showed you that contains a list of items and their prices. So this is the response. Let me show you the request for this item. Here's the request, starting to build, and here is the authorization header that is based on this attribute. The authorization header is created on the request, and then the data is retrieved. Also, let me show you one of the earlier calls. Let's say for login, if I can find it. Here it is. So here's a request for a login with the device unique identifier and its password. And I just want to mention that if the user decides to uninstall the game and reinstall the game, the account on the exist side does not change. The game maintains the same identifier and password. It's based off of system variables that never change. So here's a call into the login resource, and there's a bunch of callbacks here happening as the call is being made. And that's really it. I apologize for jumping all over the place. This is my first YouTube video. If you'd like to know more, I'd love to show you more. And actually, I do have one more thing to show you. So this is where I go to the Oxygen to browse through my devices, since they contain the @ symbol. So this whole device folder is created when the device registers with a device ID. and the registration document contains the date and time that the device was registered. And the device profile is updated every time the game is started with the device type, model, and operating system. A game session is then created that has the date and time as well as the game version. And the place folder, every time a level is played inside the game, a document is sent over with the level ID and whether the player won or lost and other information. The purchases folder, whenever a person makes a purchase, the purchase information is captured so that we can make decisions later on whether we should increase prices or decrease prices. And we also have the availability if a person has signed into Game Center and we know their alias, we are able to give them money. So next time they start up, I will just put their game alias in here and give them some money. Kind of an incentive if, let's say, we hear some complaints about the game and we set to resolve those complaints, but in the meantime, you know, let us ease your pain a little bit until we provide a fix. So yeah, again, this is it. Let me know if you want me to talk about something else. I appreciate you watching it. Thanks.